All right, continuing our discussion about women's sports and how they've become really a microcosm for the transgender agenda and their attempt to literally erase categories for women and women's spaces. I am joined now by NCAA volleyball player Macy Petty. Macy, welcome so much to Washington Watch. Great to have you on board with us.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Well, listen, I'm sure you likewise saw the discussion during the Senate Judiciary hearing consisting of Riley Gaines, but there were witnesses there that the Democrats had who were refusing to acknowledge that there is a biological difference between men and women. Have you experienced this type of thing, or what is your experience in all of this?
I have experienced this argument, and honestly, they are hard set on avoiding biological truths. They can't answer a simple question, which is just why are sports separated to begin with? I play volleyball, and men's volleyball nets are over 7 inches higher than female volleyball nets. No one can tell you why, because it's biological truths. And when you admit that there's biological differences between men and women, you know that a male playing against females is just inherently unfair.
Well, I'm sure you're very much aware of the sad story, speaking of volleyball, of a volleyball woman player who suffered a concussion when she took a spike from a biological male in the head, injured her neck. Do those who are pushing this LGBT agenda, this transgender agenda, all this sort of stuff, simply want to ignore those kinds of realities and those stories?
That is exactly what they're doing. I actually am from South Carolina, but I played volleyball in North Carolina for a club there, and I had to play against a biological male myself who identified as a transgender woman, therefore was allowed to exempt from the basic rules of volleyball and play on a girls' volleyball net, and we lost, and it was pretty embarrassing, and I went around testifying, but the North Carolina legislature had opportunities to pass Save Women's Sports bills, but they said it was a non-issue. They said it wasn't happening. They said it was just being hateful. And then you have stories like Peyton's, like you just said, where these girls are being hurt just because they won't accept that this is happening. We're seeing stories like Leah Thomas, where girls are losing championships and losing scholarships and losing these opportunities. But these people won't admit that these are happening. Look around. It's happening all around us.
Well, it is happening, and we have come so far over the decades with women's athletics across the board. Mm-hmm. And it seems as though, to me, and I'd like to know your reaction if you feel the same way, but it seems as though the carpet is just being pulled out from underneath all the advancements that have been gained through, in regard to women's sports. It seems like so much of that now is being threatened to be totally eradicated, mm-hmm. as these biological males are being welcomed to come in and just dominate, literally, in so many sports.
That is so true. Today is the 51st anniversary of President Richard Nixon signing Title IX, and that is a great thing and something that should be championed. But we look around, and instead of celebrating, we're seeing, like you said, it's being erased. People are happily championing male athletes coming in and taking away these opportunities that Title IX has protected for 51 years. And it just shows how dead set they are on this ideology, and they're willing to erase 51 years of progress in their allegiance to it.
They really are. So people ask me, and I want to ask you, because this is important. This seems to be a rather new phenomenon. I don't recall this type of stuff happening when I was younger, but now it seems as though more and more biological males are transgendering, identifying, and as a result, participating in women's sports. What is your experience of that? Does this appear to be not only a rather new phenomenon, but a growing one?
It is absolutely growing, and that's kind of the nature of sports. Like I said, I started testifying on this issue about 2.5 years ago. It was my freshman year of college, and nobody would listen to me. Nobody would pass these Save Girls Sports bills. They were saying I was making it up, just trying to find things to complain about. But now you look around, and it's too late in some circumstances. Riley Gaines already came in 5th. and had to give up that trophy to Leah. Peyton already has these severe head and neck injuries. All of these things have already happened, and people are still denying it. But that's the nature of sports, right? If you're a college coach, your job is dependent on you being able to beat your opponent. And if your opponent is a biological male, you're going to have a whole lot easier time beating that opponent if you also go out and recruit a biological male. So this is just a slippery slope, and we need to put a stop to it now before more girls get hurt.
Wow, that's a great perspective when you look at the slippery slope being involving the pressure placed on coaches to win. And winning becomes everything at that level. And so coaches probably are oftentimes at least willing to take on a biological male in women's sports because they've got to get the win. Let me ask you this. There is, in addition to the struggle of the whole issue of biological men in the sports, people like you who are stepping up and speaking about this, pushing back, you're also receiving a lot of pressure just for standing up for the rights of women. First of all, thank you for the courage. Thank you for taking a stand. We are grateful for that. But why do you think there is such resistance to people like you for standing up?
Well, they are pushing this rhetoric that we are only out here to hate, and that is so not true. We want everyone to be able to play sports. I have seen so many amazing success stories because of sports, and I think that that's something that we need to protect. And everyone can play sports, and we can preserve that opportunity as long as we preserve sex-based protections. That is the only way that we can continue this momentum that we've had for 51 years now. We have to be able to allow male and females alike to play sports, and no one is exempt from the basic rules of sex-based protections that you have to play according to your sex.
Thank you so much, Macy Petty. You are a great athlete, but also a great American, and we're grateful for you taking such a courageous stand, and thank you for joining us this evening on Washington Watch.
Thank you so much for having me.